Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Relinquished deck profile. So I'm really excited for this deck because this deck just got some new support in King's Court in the form of Golden Eyes Idol, which is an amazing new card to be able to throw in this deck, and it really helps out what Relinquished is trying to do, being able to take your opponent's monsters away from them and use them against them, which is amazing. I absolutely love the way this deck plays, and this deck holds a very special place in my heart because Relinquished was actually my very first card ever, which is just so cool to be able to build a deck around your very first card ever. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name description every single video, getting a signed card in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Relinquished, which these are the very old school Pegasus versions of Relinquished, which basically just says that you can once per turn target an opponent's monster, equip it to this card, and then this monster gains attack equal to the monster equipped to this card by its effect, which is a very interesting effect just to be able to make this card that's a 0/0 ritual monster get really big to be able to attack your opponent. We then play 3 copies of Millennium Eyes Illusionist. Millennium Eyes Illusionist has a really neat effect as well, that you can discard this card from your hand, target an effect monster your opponent controls, and equip it to an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or Relinquished you control as if it were equipped by its own effect. And if an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or Relinquish is special summoned, add this card to your hand from your graveyard, and it's not optional. It just jumps right back into your hand. You don't get the choice. It actually says right here in the second to the bottom line of text that it is not optional. We then play 3 of the new Golden Eyes Idol. So I started out testing it with 1, and then I went to 2 because I really liked it. Finally, I settled on 3. I really like 3 in this particular deck. I could see it going to 2 eventually with the way I'm playing the deck, but it is a really good card to play at 3. So what this card does is it once per turn, quick effect, you can activate this effect, look at your opponent's hand, and after you do, this card's name becomes Thousand Eyes Idol into the end phase. And if this card is banished or sent to the graveyard by a card effect, then you get to target one effect monster your opponent controls and equip that monster to an Eyes Restrict or a Relinquish monster you control, and that card cannot be normal summon, and then while equipped to by this effect, that monster gains attack equal to the attack of that opponent's monster. You can only use effect of this card once per turn. It's really good because it can give you some knowledge of looking at your opponent's hand. It kind of mimics the effect of the Millennium Eye that Pegasus used during Duelist Kingdom to look at your opponent's hand to kind of know what's coming, which is really cool. I love that effect, that once per turn that it's a quick effect that you can look at your opponent's hand to know exactly the card that you want to hit, which is why I'm playing it at 3, because a lot of times that if you can get that knowledge to know what they have, you can go into some really crazy plays and know where to stop them. We then play a single copy of Illusionless Faceless Mage. This card is just a 1-of to me. I just like playing it because it's super nostalgic. It has the ability that if face-up Eyes Restrict fusion monster or Relinquish you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard or your hand, which is pretty cool to be able to special summon it from either place. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target an Eyes Restrict fusion monster or Relinquish in your grave and special summon it back to your field, which is really good. They do have to properly be summoned, but you can special summon them back with this card, which is really good. We did play 3 copies of Manju of the 10,000 Hand. Manju is really good in this deck because Manju can just normal summon itself to your side of the field to give you those additional monsters, to get you the search of your particular ritual spell that you might need, which is really good, or ritual monster that you might need to go into your fusion plays. I then played 2 copies of Jester Confit. Jester Confit is just here to go into some link plays as well. It's a level 1 monster, which is really good. It can help you get super poly out for going into Anaconda. I don't play Dragoons in this build, but you can if you want to with the Jester Confit. But just to go into your copy of Super Polymerization is really nice because your copy of your Millennium Eyes Restrict just requires a Relinquished monster plus a copy of an effect monster, so you can super poly into this card very easily by just using a Relinquished on your field and using this with Anaconda, which is really, or using this plus any other monster in your field to go into Anaconda, and it special summons itself for free. Or you can use it as the material to summon out your copy of your Relinquished because it does require just 1 level. We then play 2 copies of Kinkaboya. Kinkaboya is really good because when this card is normal summon, you get to special summon from your graveyard 1 level 1 monster, which is a lot of cards in this particular deck. Jester Confit is 1, Relinquish is 1 if it's removed from the field after it's been properly summoned, and even Golden Eyes Idol can actually be resummoned to your side of the field off this card's effect, which is a very good effect, just to revive those cards from the graveyard to go into link plays. The only downside of this card is it is a spirit monster, so you can add this card back. You have to add this card back to your hand during the end phase, which is the only downside of this card. We then play a whole bunch of kaijus in this deck, which is a single copy of Yugioh, which is a star-destroying kaiju, one copy of Thunder King, one copy of Dolgaran, one copy of multi-dimensional kaiju, one Gandarla, one copy of Kumungus, and a single copy of Gameciel. I basically play one of each kaiju in here because you have the room for it. And Relinquished can just gobble up your opponent's monsters. If they do Dragoons you, or they go into something that's really powerful, like a Megaclops or something like that, you can just basically tribute them away with a kaiju and then gobble it up with a Relinquished and swing at your opponent with a Relinquished, which is really good. I like the way that that actually works because you play 7 of them. You're always going to open up one of them. So you have a lot of particular plays that you can actually go in with your particular kaijus that you play. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is basically just here because you can actually summon out Millennium Eyes Restrict extremely easily in this particular deck with your copy of your Instant Fusion. We play 3 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. The Kaiju Slumbers are basically here to stop your opponent from getting a crazy board. It can just basically hit your opponent, destroy all monsters on the field, and then you get a kaiju and they get a kaiju. It doesn't matter if they get the big one or the little one, as long as you have Relinquished to be able to summon after this card's activation. It does destroy the monsters and then special summons the kaijus, which is pretty good, but you can basically just gobble it up to make Relinquish get bigger and kind of OTK your opponent with this one card plus Relinquish. We then play 3 copies of Black Illusion Ritual. Black Illusion Ritual is a really good card in this deck. It basically just lets you, not fusion summon, but ritual summon into your copy of your Relinquished, which is really good just to immediately go into Relinquish using this card. It's a super old school card that just goes into Relinquished super fast, which is good. We play 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites because you're going to use this card to search your copy of Black Illusion Ritual plus your copy of Relinquished to your hand. This card is one of the best cards to actually draw into in this entire deck, to be able to just immediately activate this, grab Relinquished, and then grab the ritual spell to go into it. We play 3 copies of Relinquished Fusion, which is why I was playing the Jester Confis, is because you can use this with your copies of your Anaconda to let you fusion summon into your copy of your Millennium Eyes or your Thousand Eyes Restrict, which is really cool. It has the ability that you can fusion summon 1 Eyes Restrict fusion monster from your X deck by banishing materials from your hand, field, and your graveyard. And then during the main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target 1 effect monster your opponent controls. Equip to that monster to a Eyes Restrict or a Relinquished monster you control as if it was equipped by its own effect, which is really cool to just immediately grab an opponent's monster by banishing this and make it so it's equipped to Relinquish, which is really, really awesome. We then play 3 copies of Super Poly to round out the deck. The Super Polys are basically here because you can go into a lot of Super Poly targets in this deck, from Millennium Eyes Restrict all the way down to Starving Venom, Dracostapelia, and Mud Dragon. You have a lot of different cards in this deck that actually benefit off of this card to out opponents' boards. This deck is pretty much the deck to out boards, which is what's really awesome about this deck, and then why I love it so much is because basically it doesn't matter what your opponent summons against you, as long as you have like a Relinquished and a Kaiju, you're going to be fine because you can tribute their monster and then equip it to the copy of Relinquished, which is really cool. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Millennium Eyes Restrict. Millennium Eyes Restrict is extremely important and one of the best cards in the entire deck. It has the ability that once per turn, when an opponent's monster activates an effect, quick effect, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls that's in their graveyard or that they control, and equip that target to this card you control, and it gains attack and defense equal to the equipped monster's attack and defense. And also it has the ability that monsters that are equipped to this card's name cannot attack, and also their effects are negated while they're facing on the field, which is really cool to be able to just immediately negate their effects, because basically you can negate hand traps, you can negate monster effects, like your opponent throws their Dragoons and you can get rid of anything in the graveyard and it activates. You can just immediately like grab something off the field with this card as long as it can be targeted, which is really good just to be able to grab anything that you want. Usually you're grabbing a kaiju of your opponent, like if you throw a copy of say a kaiju against your opponent, you got this, and then they try and hand trap you, you can then grab the hand trap to negate it out of the graveyard, which is pretty cool. That's what a lot of people use it with Instant Fusion nowadays, but it's still a really, really powerful card to play in its own deck. Play 2 copies of Thousand Eyes Restrict. You're not going to summon this quite as often, but basically what this card does is it's just basically Relinquished, but it has some added bonus effects because it has the ability, as long as this card remains face up on the field, other monsters cannot change their battle positions, and also this monster can take on the attack and defense of 1 monster equipped to this card, which is just really good, but basically making it so they can't change the battle position is a very powerful effect. We then play Starving Venom for a Super Poly target. just as a really good super poly target in this deck. One copy of Dragostapelia. Dragostapelia lets you once per chain target one face a monster your opponent controls and place a Preda counter on it. Its level becomes 2 and its effects, and if it becomes a level 1 with a Preda counter on it, and negate the activation of effects of monsters that have Preda counters on it, which is really good. One copy of Mud Dragon because it's also a super poly target. This card's really good in this deck just to be able to throw against your opponent. One copy of Access Code because it does deal with a lot of boards to be able to just pop cards on the field. You can play Boral Sword if you want to over this card if you're looking for more of a budget option, but this card will probably be reprinted in the 10s, so wait for the 10s to come out. One copy of Unicorn to be able to spin stuff. Phoenix to pop spells and traps. IP because IP can go into your higher up link monsters like Unicorn or Access Code during your opponent's turn. One copy of Anaconda because basically this card throws out your copy of your Super Poly or your Relinquished Fusion from the deck, which is really good for this particular build. One copy of Linkrevo because you play so many level 1s in this deck, and a single copy of Relinquished Anima because Relinquished Anima is basically Relinquished, but flipped upside down and turned into a Link monster for a Link 1 card. This card is really good. It can target a monster that it points to and gobble it up, and then it gains the attack of that monster, which is really good. I really like this card in this deck as a 1-of, but I probably wouldn't play it any more than 1. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoy it. It's a really amazing deck. I really love the way this deck actually plays. It's super amazing to be able to play my favorite old school card. It's just such a good deck to actually be able to kind of base it around. I love that they gave it more support in the form of GoldenEye's Idol, which is a card that I've actually been waiting for it to come out since it was announced in the OCG. And it's just something that I'm really excited to actually play with going forward, which is a super fun deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.